Welcome to The Grant, the EU funding podcast. The Grant. My name is Niels Tudor Winter, and I am the creator, editor, and host of The Grant. The Grant is an independent, non-commercial podcast initiative with the ambition to dig into all corners of the EU R&D funding system on topics of interest for the full EU R&D funding community. Somehow Norwegians seem to like to be on The Grant. I have a good handful of recordings in the box now with organizations from our dear associated friends in the north. There is a great R&D and innovation environment in Norway, so I'm very happy to be able to share that with you all. The rest of you are, of course, also welcome. This week, I'm zooming in on the area of regional representation in Brussels. Brussels is filled with regional representations from all over Europe that is both working with general policy and concrete project facilitation for stakeholders from their home region. I have myself been working in such an office and hence, of course, wants to share how they work. To put meat on that bone, I invited long-time director of the West Norway Office, Merete Mikkelsen, into the virtual podcast studio for a talk about the motivation and the function of their office. In the episode, we cover how they keep a strong connection to the stakeholders in the home region. We have a talk about their lobbying and influencing efforts, and of course, we look into the project facilitation. Excellent content to understand how regional representations in Brussels they work. Please enjoy. The Grant. Welcome to The Grant, the EU funding podcast. Today we will zoom in on the Brussels ecosystem. Now, the Brussels ecosystem is a huge animal. It's a monster, even to some. There is a cacophony of course, the institutions themselves from the Commission, but of course also a huge amount of different representations, industrial offices, and so on and so forth, because of the institutions. Now, it is my ambition to open that up for you, my dear listeners out there, because it's not as cacophonic as it seems when you get there and you live there and you start to map the place, so to say. Now, I have a background myself in a regional representation, and it was natural for me, of course, to reach out to one of the offices that is part of my network from back then. Now, I have a tendency to talk too much when I open up the program, so Merete, please excuse me. Welcome, Merete.
Thank you.
Before I say anything else, please introduce yourself.
So, thank you for the invitation. My name is Merete Mikkelsen. I'm Norwegian, come from Bergen, and I'm the director of the West Norway Brussels office. And I've been there for 17 years, but the office itself is 20 years, so I haven't been there all from the start, but almost.
That's impressive. I actually didn't know that you had been there so long. That's excellent. It's good because I tend to get people in with a lot of experience. It's always very nice because there's a lot of critical mass, so to say, when we talk. Now, Merete, 17 years. Shortly, can you share a little bit about where your key capacities within EU funding has sort of, which leg you stand, proposal support, lobby support, networking?
Well, actually, all of them are in the scope of of the services we provide. Actually, so we cannot say that we do only one of them. But I think that we have our strength in policy surveillance, if you can say so, and having an overview of the policies, but in the sense of that we want to put that all into projects and exchange with European cooperation partners. So we do, and then we do some soft lobbying in the sense that we are doing events in Brussels where our aim is to promote our region and reach out for good partnerships. So I cannot take out one, But depending on where we are, what we are in the phases of also program cycles, we will tend to do more of one and less of the other, maybe.
Have you ever written a proposal?
No, actually, and that's one of the services we don't provide as an office. But what we do provide is that we overlook applications that our members write, but we then go more into the policy section where we say we can help you connect this with what's going on in the EU, because all proposals are about what the EU is for us and what we can do for them somehow.
So you can say that your main capacity is the facilitating. So you are a master of facilitation, so to say, because 17 years it gives a lot of stamina and understanding of how systems work, and so that's an art in itself. Thanks. Normally, my guests then get a chance for shameless self-promotion of the organization they work for, but because this episode is exactly about the office, then it's a full episode of shameless self-promotion of the West Norway EU office, because that is what the topic of today is. We're going to have a talk about your regional representation, West Norway EU office. We're going to have a talk about what key activities you have, and what you are doing in order to reach your targets and goals of the investment, so to say, from the regional government back home in Norway. And so, of course, the added value for you, dear listeners out there, is to understand what kind of organizations are in Brussels, and zooming in on what a regional representation is doing. Merete, this is actually going to be more conversation than an interview, because I've been a regional representative myself. So it's always good when there's some knowledge behind, so I'm not just sitting and asking questions. Can you, as a fly-in, can you share with us what is the West Norway EU office, core mission, the background for establishing the organization, and also how it came about?
Yeah, maybe you can start with the beginning. We started 20 years ago. Yeah, that's easier. We started 20 years ago, as I already said. The initiative came from the city of Bergen, which is the biggest municipality that is member in our office. We're an association, which means that we have members coming and going. But Bergen, together with, at the time, 3 counties, and I can't remember how many there were at the start, but there were at least 10 municipalities at the outset started the office. And I think, of course, there were many reasons for that. The region already being very international, having the look towards the outer world outside their coasts. It was a natural thing to do, but maybe the natural thing had not yet been to do something in Brussels as an EU office and as an EU relation. That was somehow lacking. And that's why they wanted to start the office. And in the portfolio at the time, and still is, it's with a public angle, let's say. It's coming from, the initiative came from the city of Bergen. The head of the city of Bergen at the time, Anne-Grete Strøm-Eriksen. And so the angle was a public angle, but at the same time, they wanted to include culture, research, business interests, and also the interests of the public itself, how they actually go about international cooperation. So there was a quite big scope. And it's the traditional thing about opening doors, finding project possibilities, and spreading information. All these things they are quite traditional, I think, in many of the outsets and the lists of to-do lists of the Brussels offices. So that's where it all started, 2003, and then, as I say, membership have gone up and down, but a fairly good membership core over the years. And in 2018, we also got an educational institution into our membership, the HVL, which is a University of Applied Sciences in the covering actually several of the counties that we are working for.
Mm-hmm.
So that has maybe added a bit of the more specific science focus in our work.
Mm-hmm.
We have also had some energy actors in, we have had a ports in and out, but for the moment we are only municipalities. So who are we today? We are an office with 2 employees. At the outset, it was 1. We have been up to 3. Then we went down to 2 again. As I said, economy and memberships are going up and down. But for the moment, we are 2. And we also have a very valuable additional help in stagiaires, trainees coming from the region. So we have 1 or 2 trainees every semester.
Mm-hmm.
So that's us today. So we are covering 2 counties, Vestland and Møre and Romsdal, because there has been a fusion of counties. So it's a bit funny. We are less counties today than when we started, but we are the same. But there have been a reorganization of the counties at home. So that's how it is.
First question, starting with that. How is the finance? Is that as a head count, so to say, of inhabitants, and then a ratio Norwegian crowns per head of
That's
the
how
municipality?
it is. It's being indexed every year now, so that helps us keep track of the pace of economy in general. But it's per head in the municipalities and per head in the counties, which means an overlap actually. But we don't service them all in the same way. Let's say they have different services, of course.
Yeah.
County administration is not the same as the municipal administration, so that's why we count them all in. Yeah.
And is it so? How many municipalities are you covering?
We are covering for the moment 14, and
Okay.
then we have 2 counties and this and HVL, the University of Applied Sciences.
Okay, but it's so it's more. Is it so the municipalities, are they doing the head count, or is it the councils, the regional councils?
They are all paying on their own. They're paying their own memberships.
Okay. Just curious, because this is something that is very. I know from the Danish offices the same thing. Most of them, or used to be, at least when I was in the system, this head count issue, where I said how much the board, how much the decision makers would allow them to have, so they would decide the size of the office. So it's sort of a mirror of the political will. That level is sort of a indication of how much they're willing to invest in this, how important they see it also.
And it's important to say that the big members are of course investing a lot, but given the fact that we're an association, everybody gets the same. So I would say it's also a very much a team spirit among the members, saying that it doesn't really count how much you've paid. All the members have the same rights. But of course, it's up to each member to use the services in a good way, so they get the money back if they're really focused on that. But and they are to a certain extent, which is natural. If you pay, you want something back. But I would say it's quite a good community between the members. It's not a very much focus on this.
Yeah. There are always differences in how these things are perceived in regional and local administrations. I know that exactly also from the work I have now, which has nothing to do with EU funding, but it's the same issue of base funding for the office, and the different views from different representations can be an issue at board level and in the decision making part. And exactly this, with what do we get out of it, that's it can be delicate to sit in the middle of it. But you've been there for 17 years, so I guess that you're doing fine with it. And my best guess is that you also have a very good relationship to the members. Yeah?
Absolutely, we do, and I think. As I said, it's a very friendly atmosphere in our office. Very good relation between us and the members. Yeah. Absolutely.
All right. Not gonna pick in that anymore, but because this is some of the backgrounds, that is something that for a head of an office like you are, it's something that can take quite some time sometimes when there are discussions about these things. So I'm not gonna pick in that anymore. I'm happy that things are flowing well. Now, functions and organization can you share a little bit with us about the practical organization? You said that you're 2 people in the office.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we are 2, which means that being that few, we try to overlap. We're having divided our tasks between us, the portfolios that we find the most important to follow and that we are asked to follow. But at the same time, it's very vulnerable if we don't know anything about what the other person is doing. So we have a quite sharing community also in the office, helping each other out. But my colleague, Anna Ligre Solvang, who's the European counselor in our office, she is our advisor. She is doing a lot on the Green Deal, energy, environment, and following those very closely. I have been working more on the regional affairs because although we are not members of the EU, it's important to recognize that the regional development in the EU sets the pace, but also the rules for regional support. I mean, we're in the economic area, so we have to follow on that. And then also education, we follow. I follow quite a lot of that, but also my colleagues. So we are overlapping quite a lot, but we're getting by. And some things we put aside for a while because the EU is not working so much on it, and then we, in a way, can put some things a little bit on the side and focus more on other things. But I have to say, for the moment, Green Deal is somehow dominating everything we do, because the Green Deal is linking into all the things we are doing, whether it's education, skills, or energy, for example, or maritime even. So it's linking into all those things.
Yeah, and actually in the rundown, I haven't put in there the actual content, which areas you are focusing on. We'll get back to that in a second, because I'm going to pick a little bit in that. But so you try to, this is it's delicate. Two main two people. It has to be very well working tandem there, right?
Mm-hmm, absolutely, and it does. Luckily, we are really, and I've always had very good colleagues, I have to say, throughout the 17 years. We weren't always 2, but we have when we became 2, it was very important step up for the office.
Yeah. And the only factor there that can be, because if you have a good tandem, it's good, that's fine. But then you have the stash shares, and that you don't, sometimes it's a matter of who you can get more than, that I remember very well. It was sometimes quite difficult actually to get applications for the rounds that we had, and that I've had stash where I would think, wish it could have been someone else. Well, but how is it? Do you have 1 or 2 at the moment?
Stagiaires. We have 1, but we have a very good system for this, and I think this could maybe be interesting for for the listeners, at least I hope, because every semester we have a stagiaire, and most of the time we receive them from the University of Bergen through a specific. They actually take a subject in the university. They actually apply and get it as part of the degrees, whatever it is, whether it's about bachelor or a master's. They get they can actually do the semester in our office and have points back for the degree in it. So what they do is that that's a very, very important one, and a very good one. We started with that like more than 10 years ago. And if we don't get a good applicant, or we don't get enough applicants from the University of Bergen, then we will maybe take somebody else, or if there is somebody better, we will take that person. But it's always the criteria that because it's there is no pay involved. So for us, it's important that they actually get knowledge or university points back. So that's the trade-off for us, because then that means that we get their work, but they get something back. They haven't worked for nothing. And they get actually it either because it's a compulsory thing in their degree, or because they're actually doing the subject in the University of Bergen.
Mm-hmm. I guess then they get support from the government for studying.
Then they have the right to apply for the student funding, and also. But what made this a big difference for us? When did this become very interesting? Is that there is something called Erasmus Plus, but it's practice. So it's not the university study scholarships they get, but they get money from the Erasmus as a supplement.
Okay.
So they get some additional pay there. And that's very important. So we feel it's also a very European way of working.
Yeah. Very good, clever. And I guess the key, the catch here is that they, because they are involved content-wise related to the studies, there is a baseline interest.
Absolutely, because this in the university is actually based on policy studies, so they have actually a basic knowledge about the EU before coming, so they can actually have a better qualification to help us in the office than just anyone.
Perfect. That's just good, clever, well done. Key functions.
Key functions. What do you mean then? The office?
Yeah. Just because now we are going to dig into what you do in a little bit more detail, but the sort of the headline. So you are having you're doing the soft influencing, as you mentioned, and
so at some point we said to ourselves we need to maybe reformulate. We really wanted people to be clear about what we deliver. Because it's important to say that we actually deliver something. We're not a company, but we are delivering.
Sure.
So we said that the primary service was information through our network, our newsletters, our reports on policy matters, and we have had various ways of doing that up through the years. We have been varying a little bit. Then competence is important to deliver, to give trainings on how the EU is working. And we are running then conferences here in Brussels, but we are also doing study trips with specific program developed together with the people coming. And we're also doing a lot of speeches, of course, here and there, whether it be in Brussels or at home in the region. That's important to say that people don't always have to come to Brussels to see us. That's not always possible, and it's not always affordable either. So that's important. And then we say that we deliver project knowledge. That's the third service.
Yeah.
And you already asked me whether we had written proposals. So I already said we don't really write them, but we can point people in the right way. But we can show people the right way, and we can help them on the way with this, the European matters in a application we can absolutely help with, so that they find the buzzwords. And the fourth thing we deliver, we say, is networks.
Yeah.
Networks in Brussels, and we will probably come back to that. Brussels is full of networks. You can almost not count how many of them they are, and it's only the imagination that puts the limits. So that's also the fourth thing we actually have to deliver to the members.
Yeah. You mentioned trainings. Do you do trainings, actual trainings, sort of workshops?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's also part of the things we offer to the members, that we can come to them and do trainings.
Okay, so you go back to Norway. Do you go to them? Yeah.
Or they come here, and we run also together with the other Norwegian offices. We run a basic training on EU and the EEA. So that they actually know how the EEA agreement works and how the EU works. And that we do together with the 5 other representations from Norway. So we are 6 altogether.
Yeah, because you sit in the same house.
No, we sit at the same house as the Agder county representation. And then the others are a bit scattered around in the EU area.
Okay.
But we have very good contact with them.
But you sit in the Norway house, no?
We sit in Norway house, absolutely.
Yeah.
We've done so from the beginning.
Yeah, this is trainings and these kind of information events and so on. That's sort of a key thing. It's same thing in the Danish system, yeah. How these things work. You go home, you go to municipalities or to specific teams or on climate, for instance, environmental teams from municipalities, and you let them know which kind of boxes they can approach and so on and so forth. Okay, but we'll dig a little bit more into these things as we move on into more detail. And we have covered the key stakeholders, but maybe not. So of course you cover your members. So the municipalities are the main beneficiaries here, but probably your municipalities, they would like you to also help their companies.
Interesting question. Actually, more and more.
Yeah.
But we are also very aware of what we are good at, and we have something called Innovation Norway, which is big organization, also working a lot with the companies, much more specifically.
Yeah.
Of course, on exploitation, but also actually on EU funding. So it's important for us to not try to be Innovation Norway because they are much better at it. But the question is interesting because I see that the municipalities in Norway are becoming much and more throughout the years. And of course, as we have already said, I've seen somehow the development a little bit, that the municipalities are being more and more interested in what can I say, facilitating the development of entrepreneurial activities, whether it is startups, but it's also helping those who are already there. And of course, what's coming up now is also the green things we have to do to turn things around and environmentally, but also economically, because that's what's going to pay off in the long run. So yes, actually, and that's why at the outset when the office was started, as I said earlier on, they had this entrepreneurial and business part in the portfolio, but we sometimes do this more with the company facilitation of the municipality, because many municipalities have their own support to companies. So very often they are our contact point, because that's easier for us than going into dialogue with specific companies. But it happens. It doesn't mean that we don't do it, but it's easier sometimes to do that. And sometimes we say, yes, we can help you with this, but for those things, you better ask somebody else. And then again, we are here at pointing them in the right direction, which is also a big part of our work.
It's interesting. This is interesting because it's you have a broad variety of regional representations from all over Europe and Brussels, but especially the Nordic countries, they tend to go into a service where they get a little bit more support with the EU funding part. It's not only a policy towards the Commission, but there's quite a difference between how the offices are doing this. For instance, Copenhagen Regional Office, they have paying members just like you, and they only help them exclusively. So those are the ones that can get help and so on. And that can be companies, that can be municipalities. So it's municipalities, then organizations under the municipality that can get support. Other offices in Denmark, there it's much more broadened out, where it's they have decided to say, well, the municipalities and their focus, so to say. So if they want a business service, so to say, in Brussels, then so the difference in how the offices work and what the consultants there need to do is quite different. And so here, because of the structure back in Norway, where you have Innovation Norway that is quite well equipped when it comes to EU funding also, then sort of the weight from your members is maybe you focus here on helping the municipalities' functions instead. Is that a correct analysis?
Yeah, to a certain extent, absolutely. I think that there are certainly some things that we are really not the best ones to do it. But then again, there are some new ways of working where actually even the companies see that the policy knowledge that we have is becoming more and more interesting, which I think is very good. It's a good sign. And maybe if everybody used us as much as some do, then we would maybe have had to do a more, we're going to see, clear cut. Because of course, to a certain extent, we have to say, yes, it's the paying members that will receive the services, but then it's up to the member to choose where they want to put the dominance, or what can I say, the basics and the weight of the work we do for them. And it may even vary from one year to the other. But I just take note of the fact that more and more focus on, that's part of creating good communities where they are, whether it's a small city or a big city or a village. They want to create jobs. They want to create future for their inhabitants. They want to keep them and retain them, and they want good ideas for the future. So that's where we see that they have this more and more focus on business already, and also that also comes into what they ask us to do.
Yeah, these local government strategies of how the municipalities will move forward. So that's often related to environment, like labor, employment, the comfortability of the citizens, all stuff to make that is a focus of a municipality. Yeah, also seniors, health, often also, and education, the school
Absolutely.
system. Yeah,
and that's quite important for us, actually. Education and school systems.
Yeah, and so I guess that's also that's what you sit with, no? What you said?
Yes, I work quite a lot on that, and that's because we've been asked to follow these things already many years ago. Today, the EU is working a lot on skills. We are in the middle of the EU Year of Skills, or not even in the middle of it. We're in the start, because it started in May 23 already only. Mm-hmm. But we are here in the European Year of Skills, and that's a good reason for that, because skills is important, and we don't know the skills for the future. But it didn't appear that late back in my region. It started many years ago, before the fusion of the counties that we have had. So it was at the time Hordaland County Council. They were looking for the future skills they needed. And then they also involved us. And since then, I think that also was an eye-opener for us. Because we've always worked a lot on Erasmus funding of projects. That has been there at the outset, but the skills part was added already at the time, many years ago. It must be at least 10 years ago. So very interesting, and we see now that we were right in focusing on it, because now it's the whole of Europe who is actually into this question of skills, and also valuing the informal skills we have has also been very important, I think, in the EU. And well, personally, with my background, I also find it very interesting, because I was working as a national expert in the EU system before I became a director of this office, and we were working a lot on the Erasmus youth and skills also there. So that's where I can maybe also help the members a bit extra, and that's why I'm following that together. But also my colleague, she's also stepping up now with the skills year, so we are both working on that from time to time. But I have maybe the main responsibility to keep up on it.
Mm-hmm. That bridges us very well into what I just wanted to put into the conversation here about the topics and areas that you're covering. So obviously education is important for your stakeholders. What else? Do they decide together in your board? How does that work? The key topics that you have that they want you to focus on, because you're only two people. So obviously there need to be a priority. You need to prioritize what topics you can cover, not cover everything. Yeah. So how is that? Is that explicitly decided in your board, or? Yeah.
It is, but it's based on we make a work plan for every year, and in that we put down the main issues that we think should be covered based on what we see coming up in the work program of the Commission, so that we somehow see what's coming up, what do we have to follow, and what do we need to where we need to connect the dots. Mm-hmm. But on the other hand, of course, at the outset, what we see in the memberships interests. So we combine the two and put it into a document and present it to the board, and they are the ones voting it. But we are going to start, and of course we have also asked the members, but our members are organizations who are supposed to work on a lot of things. And for them, it's also difficult to say, well, let's give the priority on this, because in a way they feel that also can be difficult sometimes to prioritize one thing above the other, because they're actually they have the obligation to work on a lot of various areas. But the board is voting for the plan we prepare. But we are going to start this autumn a more strategic planning that will go over several years, which is something that we feel have been, we've had it, but it needs to be revised. And then we will also use our members and have a working group on that. But something else that is important is that we're also going to put in place a group an arena where the members can meet regularly. We have had this before, then we stopped it a little bit, and we are going to start that again, because we realize that it's important to have meeting points for the members to be able to voice their needs also in between the general assemblies or yearly meetings where the formalities are done, because that's not enough, of course, to have one meeting a year that is actually in a formality. The content work is something else, but strategic work is important. And if I can add another thing is that the ability to measure what you do is another thing that is also linked to strategic thinking. So that we already put in place last year. From 2022, we have had what's so-called measuring cards, where we have had a little list on the most important things and how much we should somehow expect ourselves to be doing. And that means also that the board can more easily see whether we have delivered or not. Because delivery in this work, you know it very well from your experience, I think also,
Indeed.
is that to measure international work is not always easy.
This way is, and I have not put that into the run. It's like this when I make rundowns. I sort of go through what is, and I always come up when I have the conversation with my guest. Exactly this. It's a key element for small offices in Brussels like this, because often there is a non-calibrated understanding of what is possible in such an office from the stakeholder side versus the reality of what is actually being done, and how you measure the activity, what kind of things should be measured. I spent a lot of time sitting and defining what is actually to capture the work that is being done. How to capture networking, how to capture outreach to European organizations, how to capture desktop research, just sitting and finding, there are so many things that are so flu when you tell it to a board. But then I've been talking to 10 different organizations, but what else? Did you give us some money? It's so it's but I'm happy if you manage to navigate in that and and have an understanding board to sort of lever this, because this can be an issue of frustrations between the two sides.
Absolutely, and I think that there is no one answer. You can always find things that you have not delivered on, and you can make also the measuring cards somehow easier to follow than others. You can challenge yourself also more when you make your cards. I think we're always very ambitious in the office, and we want to do as much as we can. And I think that our members, they really understand that. But at the same time, I think both members and administration, let's say then us in the office, will always feel that the possibilities are so many. But it's impossible to unleash all of the possibilities. So you have to make a choice. And I think that the strategic work for our office in the future will be very much this, the ability to make choices. We have already made some, but I think we have maybe to be even more, daring in doing them for the future. But this is not up to me, of course, to decide. This is the members, and that's why this process with voices from the members will be very important, I think, also in the strategic work. So it's challenging, and I think that you will always feel that the expectations are bigger in a way, because you see it yourself, even that the expectations are high, and it's always a little bit running after a train that you will never catch it. I think we have to be honest about that, but that doesn't mean something negative, but it can be a frustration sometimes, of course, because you also are ambitious yourself. You want to do as much as you can for the region.
Let's because now we're bridging very, very nicely into the connection home topic. Subtopic here, because that is I always put it when I have talks with Brussels representations of all sorts, because it's a key issue, that the geographical distance between a representation and a core organization, wherever in Europe it is. It's always at a very high. It's quite high on the sort of on the mind, so to say. It's well presented in the mind of people in Brussels, this connection issue, because there are so many issues related to it if you don't handle it properly. First, mapping on the needs of your stakeholders. How do you work practically with that? Because you have now we've been circling a little bit around how you have your members, paying members, and you serve them in one way or another with things that they find important. But how do you practically do that? Do you travel on a regular basis home, or do you have a key officer, so to say, connection person, contact in each of your members that you have a good liaison with in relation to understand what their needs are? And how can you share?
Yeah, we of course at the outset we have a very open attitude, saying that anyone can contact us anytime and all that. But we all know how it is. First things first, and international work doesn't always come first, because there are many other things to take care of in a municipality, for example.
Yeah. So
that means that they don't always call us that often. But I really feel like they know that we are here, and sometimes these specific demands are coming our way, that they want us to find out something, whether it's about rules and regulations in an area, whether it's about project possibilities, whether it's about good examples in an area, because that's also a very important part, that there are other people working on exactly the same things abroad, in other countries. So that's also good examples is also something they are asking for. So those questions are coming. But we also announce our visits sometimes, and say that we think it's time for a visit now. We are coming. When can you receive us? Or other times, if it's a new member, for example, we've had several new members the last years, and they then invite us quite quickly to come to them and see how it is, and understand better their work. And very often then it is also an included meeting with the board, the municipality or the municipal council. So that you actually meet the politicians, because that's also an important tandem, that you don't always keep in touch with the administration, but you also have to keep in touch with the politicians. And also the competence building we do in Brussels are for both. It's not only for one or the other. So that's the kind of visits we do and we offer. But one thing that I find it easier to see the needs of the members is also the way they're doing their planning work now. Especially the counties are doing their plans for the future work in a much better way. Let's say better for us who are outsiders, that are outside we can understand much better where they want to go.
Is this something you have pushed? Have you? No.
They have pushed themselves. Okay. No, they have pushed themselves because these are not plans on international work. It's the plans they have on research, where they are using the European approach. Several of them, the two counties we have a smart specialization plan. It's not only they don't have to do it, but they wanted to do it. You can also add on to that, for example, we contributed as a part of a hearing process to the plan that Vestland County was making on industry and development in their region. You see, so then we could actually put our finger a bit on things that we saw that could maybe be a bit more focusing on the European either threats or possibilities. So that's a way also we are cooperating. And we are being included in hearings. And then something that is a more daily way of work. Every second week, we have a meeting with our specific contacts in the biggest members, which means the 2 county councils, Bergen Commune and HVL, the University of Applied Sciences.
Mm-hmm.
Those 4 people are meeting with us every second week. And that
Nice.
goes 2 ways. Means that we can get some, you can check out whether what we are planning, a specific thing we are doing, there's a good way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, we also get first-hand information from them on things they are working on. And then we can also get some things that are not always specific for West Norway Office, but still is useful. So that's a very useful way to work. And we might extend it to more people, but for the moment, having a small core group, it's not really to exclude the others. It's just that we thought that was a way to start. And this actually also is left from the time when we were only one person working in Brussels, but where we had some smaller positions spread out in the region. That was how it was when I started in the office.
Yeah.
And we had some small percentages. So they are not there anymore. The money are now being paid fully to the office, but we kept this contact back in those organizations, and we've added Bergen Commune so that we have now the whole, that whole scope, access to them every second week. And that's very important. It also makes confidence, it means that it creates trust, because that means that we know each other well enough to just ask people for advice, because asking for advice, you do it from people you trust. And we really feel that there is a trust between us. And they can also ask us things that we haven't thought about. Very useful for us. Ooh, we didn't think about that. Ooh, la, that's something we should be careful about or take into account or things like that. So. Very good way to work. So, but I mean, it's open line between us and the members. And then sometimes we invite ourselves along. Sometimes we are being invited along. And maybe the last thing I want to mention then, that we made COVID into a little bit of a possibility there, because we had a hybrid situation for a long time. Very few things were happening physically in Brussels for longer than in Norway. So in a period, we also had a much bigger presence back home to be closer to the members. So that we could actually build up the relationship with the members while we were waiting for things to start up for full again in Brussels. So that's a way to where the board said, well, do we think that's a good idea when we proposed it? And they said, yeah, go for it. Stay more in the region for a while and spend more time there. And then you still participate in things in Brussels because they're hybrid or they are being online in any case. So what
did you actually move? Live in Norway for a while?
I personally had moved for a while to Bergen, but traveling to Brussels when it was necessary, so that it was easier for me to get around. And my colleague was already there because she couldn't move to Brussels during COVID, so she was already based. So we were the 2 of us for a while in the region, traveling more easily around. But having said that, we also traveled to Brussels because it started slowly up in the year when we finally did that. Things were slowly starting up in Brussels. So it didn't mean that we were only in Norway. We were maybe commuting the other way than we did normally.
Just going back to, I just wanted to say that the connection you have with the regular meetings with your key members, it's so important. Because you need structure here. Because the problem with regional representation for municipalities on the public side, like you are, is that you need to make your presence obvious on a regular basis because they forget you. It's one of the most common problems for the regional representations in Denmark that if you don't keep a string in the municipal administration, then they disappear because Brussels and EU it's something that they rarely touch, or they are hesitating doing it. So if they don't have a natural communication that is scheduled in some way, it slips. And there are many ways of doing this. Scheduled meetings, great. I think we did in the North Denmark EU office, we had a mailing list for a thematic mailing list where we send out newsletters specifically targeted to them. And of course also the physical meetings. We didn't have a schedule like this regular every 2 weeks or 3 weeks or a month, but we did try to make ourselves to have some sort of regularity of when we were going, keeping a track record of which municipalities we had been meeting, which administrations that we knew maybe could be pushed, and so on and so forth, and getting those core persons that could be your ambassador. Because that's the thing. If you have a person that understands exactly the importance or can see the idea, then everything becomes so much easier.
It's true, and of course the people we are meeting every second week, they are working on international things on a regular basis. So for them, it's natural to meet with us. While it's of course much more difficult sometimes for a smaller municipality to actually find out who would the contact person be. Because as we already mentioned, it might as well be the one working on education as the one working on culture or business development. So it's a little bit, it's not always obvious to actually find that person and put aside time for it, because it's something that it's, as we already also talked about, it's not tangible always. And that means that it's a matter of both how much time and effort you can do, but it's also what purpose it serves. So I think that's maybe two things that make this challenging. And I think we have a job to do as an office also. But of course, given the fact we're only two and many things to do, of course, you can always hide behind that. But that's not really what I want to say here. It's that being even more systematic, as you already also now said, that we have to be systematic in our approach, that we actually keep it alive somehow, what we are doing. But then again, it's also... Yeah, sorry.
You know what it also is? Because I spend a lot of time in my different positions to understand how to curve the ball to make so I didn't have to push all the time. You push and you push and nobody pulls. Yeah, it's always it's administration. It's difficult. It's always complex. No, stay away from us. It's. I spend a lot of time finding out, and what and regulars of my show will maybe have picked it up that I said it earlier. With municipalities, I said, look, that was what I came forward to. That say, okay, if you should own the EU projects, or the things you should engage yourself in should be something that you already have decided at the municipal board. We don't have to make a political process that you have to ask all sorts of places. Focus on the things that has already been politically decided, and then serve to them things where they can save money in their budget and push it to the warm hands for the schools that they all think about in the municipality. That's the resources they think about. They think, oh my God, it's scarce resources everywhere. And then you come with something where they suddenly light up. Say, oh, but you can save us 500,000 euros on this action.
Mm-hmm.
If we transform that activity we already have decided into an EU project, then we can use that for teachers or whatever.
Absolutely.
When you present it like this, then it flows a little easier.
Yeah.
And it's the same with companies, yeah. Same issue to say. You shouldn't do it for the money. You should do it because you have decided to go with the technology. You have made the decision, so it's going to save you money. It's not it's not something that you're supposed to do extra besides from what you do.
No, but I think that's also our arguments always, that do what you already want to do, and then you just included the financing from the EU in what you're already doing. And I think the educational programs have been very important for us in that way, that we have maybe been working more on Erasmus funding than we have been working on the research programs up through the years, and still do, because the educational programs are also being developed much more now. Erasmus is being developed to be much more interesting and somehow crossing into the business sector much more than before. For example, through vocational training skills and things like that. In hydrogen, where you want to have the centers of excellence, where our region has already applied several times for these kind of things, especially in the hydrogen sector now lately. So I think that And that's where I wanted to point out what I said earlier about the plans. The plans that they're making are much more easier now to transfer into projects, because the plannings that they're doing are much more, they're not so wordy. They're more about doing things and easier to percept what they actually want to achieve. And I find it more important and easy to use them than into project to show where they can make it happen, let's say.
Yeah, I think thanks. I think we have more or less covered what with the connection home. It's quite a good idea of how you're working with that. One last question: what are they asking the most of? Which service? What are the things that you're doing the most for your members? What do they appreciate most that you do? The trip to Brussels.
The trip to Brussels, yes. I mean, we had a huge delegation here this spring, an important delegation with the heads of various organizations in the region, but it was all come together in the coordination of the county council or the county of Vestland. And they appreciate that hugely because it was really a big task we took on, but we did it together also with the office of the University of Bergen here in Brussels.
It's a huge work.
It's a huge work, but and it included both knowledge building, but also they had a outreach event with a panel debate in the middle of it, and it was a great experience for us to do. As you say, a lot of work, but it also gave good results, and I think that that's a very concrete, tangible thing. So of course they like that, but also the feedback we give with the reports that we are making when we give policy notes, they are very, very appreciated too, actually. And that creates new demands. When they see the policy notes, then we will ask for something else that is linked to it. And that means that they're actually appreciating, but it also gives them new ideas. So I think that's maybe the most appreciated things we do.
How do you make those policy notes? How much work do you throw into that?
Well, it depends on the area. How much depends how complicated it is. We found a good thing to do a couple of years ago when we didn't only take in one stagiaire, one trainee, we took an extra trainee in to help us with that. So when it came to the note we did on taxonomy, we asked our trainee to do it, and then of course we were supervising the work. Apart from that, it has most of the time our excellent policy advisors who have been doing it over the time. For the moment, as I said, now Anna Lygre Solvang is my good colleague, and but she's really quick and good. So I think that's also something, there were some very important things coming on industrial policy now in March middle of March, and we had the policy note ready 1 to 2 weeks after because we couldn't do it right away. We had other things, but we were quite quick. So it takes some effort, but if you're good at structuring it and quick in percepting things like I would say my colleague is, because she's the one doing those notes, and also her predecessor Jorunn was excellent. So it doesn't take that much, but it takes probably more work than many people realize, because you have to simplify it quite considerably to make it edible for people at home. I'm not saying that to underestimate anyone, but it's just that it's quite complex, many of the things that are coming nowadays.
Thanks. That's I think that covers pretty well the connection home. We have two key topics we need to cover here in the last part of this episode. We need to talk about influence and lobbying, and we need to talk about research, like project facilitation.
Yeah.
You mentioned in the pre-talk here before we started recording that your project facilitation is not that intense. But let's just take it from the top. The lobbying.
Yeah.
So we have been already touching it a little bit, and now you sort of these policy notes that you just mentioned. It's a nice bridge into it, because that's exactly what it is, right? So these are strategic priorities that comes from Brussels that you are calibrating towards your members.
Mm-hmm.
So now you mentioned that you make these policy notes, but do you work do you also collaborate with them on input the other way from them?
Yes, we do. Well, some offices are making, there are many, of course, but there are many hearings in the EU where you can come with contributions and actually have your say.
Mm-hmm.
They even use that expression, have your say.
Mm-hmm.
And our office do not make proposals because we are covering several entities. There is no formal political government, let's say a regional government that is overarching it. So that's why we are encouraging the members to make their input themselves.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, we have good examples. The big delegation who came to see us in March, the one that I was just mentioning, where we had both input and also output, because that's also a way to promote your interest, is to also show what you stand for in Brussels in events. That's a soft lobbying, I would say. But when they came home, given the fact that there had just been new industrial things coming up, also the Raw Materials Act and various things, they have made input in the national hearing on the area, but they have also made an input in the EU hearing. So I think that's a quite good example that by putting together a program that actually includes the things that they really need to know, because this was new, and the presentations and various things they did in Brussels taught them what they needed to know about new things, and then they were encouraged to participate. But we also always let the members know when there are important hearings where we think they should have a say, but we leave it a little bit to them to do it. But we can also here verify a little bit, help them with the quality. And this is also what we did. We had a little bit of dialogue with the county at home when they wanted to give some input. We said, well, maybe you should put in here and there. We made some suggestions to the things they had already done. So I think this is it's a good way. This is the best way to use us, I think, or one of the best ways when it comes to hearings, that we can really come with input and lead them a little bit the way.
So you let them do it, and that's a good way to. Of course, it's also a matter of resources.
We can't do it for everybody.
Exactly.
No.
But you act like a sort of a road. You sort of find and identify the entry of where they would need to go with what, so to say. Is that correct?
Yeah. Or even, as I said, when they had written something, we would actually go through it and come with some extra proposals. So it can be as concrete as that. Again.
So you proofread sort of critical mass on what they want to send.
Yeah, we because sometimes it's about the mindset, we think it's important that they own it. This goes for proposals for projects too. You have to own it, and you're the expert. But we are the experts on the EU, and sometimes we have to remember that ourselves and remind ourselves. Because we think that we don't realize that everybody don't know the same things as we do. So that's why we just gave some advice now, and then they came back for us for some more advice, and that is, I think, a very good thing to do, that they remember that they can use us in that way, and that we encourage them to do so. It goes both ways.
Yeah, now you mentioned it. You are a translator.
Me.
All representative, all representations, in no matter what sort they are in Brussels, they are translators to their stakeholders. Because the language of Brussels, it's a different language than the real world, and it's both within the funding world and within the Brussels ecosystem and within the institution. It's just if you say things. If you say it like this to a normal person, they're not going to understand what you're talking about.
Sure.
So you constantly have to calibrate in your brain to explain things or write things so it makes sense for people that don't necessarily understand. So it's an important function.
But you talked about, you asked about lobbying, and I think it's important to say that also the networks that we are part of in Brussels, they are maybe the most, they are bigger lobby organizations than we are ourselves. So I think that's being in Brussels, you also have to know that working together on common standings and viewpoints are important. And we do that when it comes to ERIN, which is the regional cooperation on science and research, innovation. We are part of a hydrogen platform that was intended by the European Commission on a smart specialization hydrogen platform, which is also giving us possibilities to promote our interests and let them be heard. But it's not as visible, of course, as being West Norway, but we have infinite possibilities through various organizations. And Bergen, for example, is member of Eurocities, and all our the 2 county councils are part of CPMR. So of course we have bigger possibilities than the office itself. But sometimes we are also helping out on these areas because we're representing the region in these forums if necessary, especially ERIN, of course, where we are the member and they are acting through us actually. So
and that is exactly exactly the point about influencing. It's a good win because every stakeholder from back home, they would think, oh my goodness, it's impossible to go through this maze to find the way through to where are we supposed to put this information. But if you have persons like you and what I used to do, then that role of identifying that place where they can get that fits exactly with what they want to say and the influence they want to make and what they want to affect. When they have that spot, then it's not difficult anymore because these networks are, it's even cozy. It's kind. People are kind. It's nice networks. People collaborate fine in these organizations and so on and so forth. And then it's like the second that you get these people into these places, then they understand. But it sort of lifts them up because it's not difficult, but it's difficult to find it if you don't have someone to find you that place. Because of course it's a cacophony of organizations and how the system works. So that's actually I think that's one of the key things that is so important with offices like yours, Merete, that you are a guide in its most beautiful sense. You're a guide to people and organizations to help them through a system that has grown a little bit large, but you can find the way for them and without falling into the depths
absolutely
of the ecosystem and waste time on things that time is flying because it's such a cozy talk. I just need to check here. I think we covered it pretty well. Is there anything else you want to mention in relation to the influencing?
No, I think we've covered it well. I think I maybe just want to mention one more thing, which I think is part of this thing about working together. It's also working together with other Norwegian offices, but not only the regional offices, but also other people representing Norwegian interests here, whether it's beyond research. That's also somewhere it's important to meet up, and we also have good meeting points with the EU ambassador. The EU ambassador invites us after each meeting in the EEA committee, I guess it is, where they have let's say decided on the new acts that are going into the Norwegian or to the EEA agreement.
Then here we have to pause. We have to pause here and explain to the listener because I don't think all listeners are aware of what that is. So most listeners might be aware of the fact that Norway is not a member of the EU. But that doesn't mean that they cannot be involved, as this whole episode is an example of course. You have created, together with some other European countries that are not members of the EU, your own sort of collaborative organization called the European Economic Area. Is that correct? No?
Yeah.
And there you are sort of a little club together of your 4 countries. You are Norway, Switzerland, and Liechtenstein.
No, it's only 3 countries in the EEA agreement. It's Liechtenstein, Iceland, and Norway. But then you have the EFTA, where Switzerland is also in. So the EEA agreement is only working for Liechtenstein, Iceland, and Norway. which means that's why Switzerland are having some other challenges than we have when it comes to cooperation with the EU, because they have to renegotiate each rule and regulation, while we have the economic area that has framed most of it. And that means that is also why we can participate in the European programs, because they're part of the EEA agreement correctly, and it also regulates. Yeah. Thanks for that, because I hate abbreviations that people are just dropping around and they think everybody knows them, and we don't always. So thank you for arresting me.
This is what I do as a podcast host. I try to think of my listeners that are not always aware of abbreviations or contexts.
Very good, and thank you for that. Thank you.
No, that's it. So that's nice that you have sort of a coherence in the Norwegian group too, sort of, because you're very different, so to say. You also have Oslo City has an office, right? So you have sort of different corners of representatives, also the university, SINTEF and NTNU and so on.
Yeah.
So
But we all meet at the EU ambassadors after each meeting, but it's a we inform each other about things. It's not only the ambassador speaking to us. We are also allowed to express things that are important, which I think creates then the Team Norway spirit in Brussels.
Sure. That's nice. Mm-hmm. It's very nice. We need to have a short talk about the funding schemes and the funding, the facilitation of projects, because that's a big chunk. But as we already indicated, talked about, it's different from office to office, on which leg lies the weight. Danish offices, they tend to focus on the project facilitation. Other offices tend to focus on the policy side. What are your activities in relation to the funding schemes and supporting your members with that?
Well, we are receiving quite a lot of partner searches, which is maybe the most concrete way people see it on a daily basis, that we receive partner searches from other places in Europe, which we send home. We are always informing very well about the new policy programs when they are coming. Mm-hmm. And also when there are deadlines that we find important, but there are so many deadlines that you cannot say that we deliver everything. But we find projects important, so we encourage really people to use project funding from Europe. Mm-hmm. What we also do is that we have been doing also, matchmaking seminars in Brussels, where people are coming with their ideas, or we encourage them, to participate in projects matchmaking done by ERIN, for example, which is, for people who do not know, the network for regional innovation and research here in Brussels that regional offices are parts of. So, as I said, we don't do project facilitation, but very often it's about pointing about calls and things like that. And then there are also something that has been created back home. There have been created some networks for funding to try to enhance the Norwegian participation in specifically the research programs, Horizon. And we are trying to meet in those networks at home when we can. Because now we are back to what we talked about. How do we keep in touch with things that are happening at home? And these networks that have been created, actually in our region, it was created a long time ago, but have continued now in another shape, is that here are representatives from the university, from clusters, from public sector. They're all meeting together to try to together work on enhancing a project, maybe not a common project, but at least know what's happening. Mm-hmm. And I think that's an important thing. And for us, that has been quite a good experience to be part of that network, because it means that also our office is visible as one of the tools that the region has available when accessing a project. But many, many years back, I remember still where we were asked by County of Møre and Romsdal, they were asking us whether we knew anyone who would be maybe willing to facilitate the energy project. They wanted to do something on local energy plans, and which was an obligation to make in Norway. And there was a Swedish partner that was volunteering to be a leader. We made a partner search event in Brussels to find these people, and they put together an excellent project called Beast. What a name! But it was that's the abbreviation. And if it was today, it would have been a Horizon project. But at the time, it was an intelligent energy project. But it shows that we can absolutely do it. But it depends a little bit. I think people are having better muscles at home also now to work on projects. And when it comes to HVL, our university college or science of applied sciences, they are having both their focus on Erasmus projects and on scientific projects. So they are actually doing both.
No.
What I maybe miss is a little bit the involvement of municipalities, public sector in science and like in the Horizon projects. I think that could be increased more. But then I think we have to be much more on our outreach, especially to get the municipalities going. I think the counties they are part of some. But the municipalities, it would have been great if we were managing to lift them into some of these possibilities. But that's a big job.
This is a matter of resources, Maria.
Exactly.
Because this requires intense work efforts as a facilitator to find the right networks, to find the right project consortia, to find to support with getting them into a consortium, to do network brokerage events on behalf of, and so on. So it's an intense work where you can only do that, and this is why many of the Danish offices, they have many more people, because they have said we focus on getting funding. That's the priority here, to attract funding, external funding for our activity zone. So there they have said we need 5, 6, 7 people if we want to do this. You're 2 people. You cannot. It's you have to balance your work. And
exactly.
Norway as a nation, you're doing a lot. The Research Council is doing a lot.
Exactly.
A lot.
And they are the ones funding the networks I was just talking about. The Research Council and Innovation Norway are funding the networks to enhance the participation, where we are also meeting the others. So they are doing even things that are connecting us all in a loop. So I think that's important. Yeah. And then we also have a network with other Norwegian people here in Brussels, amongst other the Research Council and Innovation Norway, the people working on education from Norway, and a lot of others meeting up regularly in a specific innovation and research and education forum here in Brussels. So there are things we do, but as you say, it's about having the capacity to do it. And luckily, some people at home are also very good at connecting. And we also have a role to play in the regional networks for Horizon, where we are included in the network by the counties. So, but we are not playing a huge role. They are the ones owning it, and we are contributing. Yeah.
Do the councils then have the connection to the municipalities in order to, who are pushing the municipalities into EU projects?
It would vary, I think. Sometimes it would be the municipalities being invited in, even by the local enterprise, because there are also enterprises that are part of, or businesses that are part of the. But I think it's the counties that have the biggest role to play, together with, maybe with the research councillors in Innovation Norway or others. But I think I think that the landscape we are navigating in has become more complicated, because it's not only about projects anymore. I'm sure you're also aware of the fact that there are so many networks being established by the Commission.
Yeah.
And they have been also used quite a lot by our members. There are both Møre and Romsdal County and also Vestland County, as well as the city of Bergen, are part of some of these new either circular or environmental networks. And I think it's difficult to navigate for people now. It's becoming a lot to follow, including us, even us who are quite experienced. It's about what do we need? Do we need extra knowledge? Do we need money? Or do we need both? And then you have to use these tools in different ways. But I think that when you say who can lift people into the projects, I think it's good cooperation locally is the biggest secret, or the answer to that question, that you actually realize what kind of people we need to have into these projects. But the worst thing is that you don't always need the people that are living nearby. You also need maybe somebody living afar.
Yeah.
So who do you lift in on what? That is, I think, also to build a good project. It's and how many can actually get it. That's why we are not focusing on Horizon Europe all the time, because we find that it's giving a lot, but to very few, while some other projects are giving a bit more to more people. Yeah. And I think that is important to acknowledge. And of course, I have to say that as Norwegians, we have a bit less things to apply for than, for example, a Danish regional office. I see some of them getting big money from LIFE, the environmental
LIFE is
program.
an example, yeah.
And we don't have access to that, because we have to decide every time there are new programs, we decide which programs to involve in, and we don't involve in all of them.
Yeah, that's, dear listeners, it's so Norway are involved in many things, but yeah, there are key programs where...
And also in Interreg, we are participating in a limited way where we have to have the funding ourselves. We are not part of the Interreg funding, but that's also, I think, an important project type to get even qualified for a more important research project later on, which we have seen in our region, where we have been involved also in facilitating those projects.
Yeah. Does it play a role in the motivation, so to say, from your stakeholders that Norway is a quite rich country when it comes to state finances? So, I'm talking for the Danish municipalities, the system I know. Mm-hmm. There you often have cutting exercises, saving exercises, cutting people and so on, where you have to look into resources and so where the external funding from the EU is seen as sort of can save some of this. But are you having those same, because you have the oil fund, and how is it locally in the municipalities? Are they short on resources? Sort of, is that a debate? Or
the cutting game is a game that is on in Norway too. It's not, and I think it's increasingly so. Even though we have the oil fund, that's more a question on a regional, on a national level. But it's always a question: how much of it do you want to spend? And currently, the cutting game is on and has been for a long time. There is always, negotiations. Then you get a little bit more after all. But no, absolutely. In the municipalities, I think increasingly they will have to look for funding elsewhere. So I don't want to say that we are not rich, because that would be a lie. But I don't want but that I cannot say. Then it will be the lying episode, that's not nice. But I think that it's important to say that we also have to make some choices. But sure. Of course, I'm not in the shoes that I can say that they are bigger or smaller. I think, of course, the basis at the outset is much better than for many others in Europe, for sure. But we do experience that municipalities have to make quite big cuts on certain areas and have to look somewhere else for the money.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Just to explain the listeners, the oil fund, the Norwegian infamous Norwegian oil fund, the Norway decided when they discovered oil many years ago to save up money for a big fund when the oil was running out. So that means, of course, that there is an immense amount of resources, finances in that. How big is it now, Merete?
Oh,
I mean,
I don't
billions.
know. I don't even want to say
billions or
no, I don't know.
It's huge, but it was a very very clever choice. It's not like the Middle East where they spend it all on making cities in the desert.
No, it's true. It's a good thing, but it will always be a discussion how much to spend and how much to save. But of course, it means that we have something in backhand, which many places don't have. And I think also sometimes, actually, if I can add, European cooperation, I always say, puts your life in perspective. And I think Norwegians going abroad through European cooperation, they also learn a lot about what is good also many things they didn't realize were good in Norway, they realize it when they go abroad, because they see that there are some things we have that is not, they shouldn't take for granted. Also, when it comes to resources. So just to have said that I think we are putting things into perspective when we are working together in Europe, and I think on many different levels.
It's a nice note to end on. Merete, we are moving towards the end. Thanks for the funding part here. I have a segment I call the toughest challenge that I had since I sat with the very first episode recording myself alone. Toughest challenge. So the toughest challenge, what is the roughest part of being a regional representation in Brussels? What is the thing where I say, wish that would be easier? This is where we struggle a lot.
It's a very tough question, actually, and of course you did tell me that this one would come, so I can't even say that I haven't been thinking about it. So I have no excuse not to answer. What is the biggest challenge? I think I want to maybe say on a general point, it's the time it takes, the patience you have to have when working on these things. Yeah. Because and that goes for us in the office, but it also goes for the members that have high hopes and would love to have results tomorrow. And I think that's maybe the biggest challenge we have. Things take time. It's about building relations. It's about discovering possibilities. It's about trying and failing, and then maybe succeeding. So it's very much about patience and also to just keep on going. It's important. And maybe as the last thing to say, the measuring of results, because many of the results we are achieving is difficult to say, West Norway Office in Brussels, they were the ones achieving this. Most of the things we do it together with others. So you said that this was a whole episode about bragging around about what you do, and in many ways it is. But most of the things we do, we do it together with others. But of course, we would like the work we do as two people doing quite a lot of things. We think we just made a big annual report from last year, and we did quite a lot of things when we add it all up. It's of course to have the honor for what we do. Of course, it's something that we like to have, but maybe we shouldn't be too modest. So that's a challenge.
You know what? I work for an organization, a municipality association in Denmark, and we have the exact same issue. So organizations like ours, Merete, we are put into the world to make other people great, or to make other organizations great. So we work on behalf, we are a tool in other people's hand. And that is it, you grow into it, and actually it's something that we discussed, my colleagues and managers, that we have to be more aware of celebrating our own victories as a supporter and facilitator of results. We are always in between everything. So it's the municipalities that are hailing when they do something good, or it's the companies that are hailing, but so it's always a little bit of a shadow world, so to say, where it's fine, so you help people. That's what we do.
It's our job. It's our job
to help and help and help. But sometimes it's nice to have being acknowledged for the effort that is being put into that.
And luckily we are being also, of course, appreciated by many, and they do tell us also. But yes, on a daily basis, that's our job, and we have to do it. And luckily we are getting a lot of good feedback. But patience, and also, I think you mentioned it earlier, that we actually see that there are some limits in a way. There are a limited number of possibilities, but we cannot take them all. We have to make a choice. Yeah. And that is maybe in the end the biggest, that if we want to have results, we have to make some choices, and they are hard to make.
Yeah, that was a nice ending. Right. Thank you so much. I'm just gonna land the plane of this
Absolutely.
episode towards the listeners before we say goodbye. So, dear listeners, thank you so much for listening to the end. I hope you enjoyed this. This was a little bit feeling on my home ground here because I've been working so much in Brussels. So it was very, very nice having chat about these things. I hope you enjoyed it too. Opening a window into a representation of a region in Brussels. Now, do remember to go and check my back catalog if you're a new listener. I have well above 60 episodes now, and there should also be something for you. There are both proposal preparation tips and tricks and so on. I have networking if that's for liking a Brussels ecosystem. I have research and so on. So there's lots of stuff in there. So go and check it out. There should definitely be something there. And while you're there, do not forget, if you have any sympathy whatsoever with what I'm doing here, please subscribe to the email list. This is the currency of the podcast, of a podcaster. So please, by all means, sign up to that. You will. I don't spam anybody. You just get an email when I release a new episode. So don't worry about that. There you'll also find the hub. It's a spare time initiative. So I do try to build all the time, and I just made an effort to build a little bit more things in there. So the hub is where I try to share where you have the funding, sort of links to the different important places of matchmaking, of where you find the calls, where you find webinars from the commission, sort of a place where you can find the important resources to take you further on. And then I always forget something. Don't forget to connect with me on LinkedIn, because that's where the communication runs. That's where on a daily basis that's where the flow is. That's where the party is going on. So that's where I share stuff. There where I comment on stuff and so on, and also your stuff if it's related to funding. So please, by all means, do that. Now, that's it, Merete. Sometimes I always get a little unstructured here in the end when I have to land the plane. But that's that. Merete, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, and thanks for listening in to the listeners. Thank you for the invitation, Nils. It was really great.
Yeah, and before we run away, I always give my guests an opportunity to get back. So if you would like some of your stakeholders, if you would like a municipality to be on this show, or if you have a thought about anything else that you would make sense from your point of view, then please, by all means, get back to me. And then I've started asking my guests what kind of podcast guests you would like to hear in an episode.
Ooh. Who would I like to know? I of course, I would like to hear something about somebody who talks a bit more about regional development and Europe, because I think that's there are quite a lot of discussions going on. Where are we going? Of course, with many things that don't concern my country necessarily, but it's about what buttons are they pushing on a European level. It will affect us in any case. So I would like to hear something about that.
Yeah. Do you, from the top of your head, are there organizations where you say, it would be interesting to hear a person from that organization?
Not necessarily. I would actually have liked to hear somebody who is really working quite closely with, for example, DG Regio and the Committee of the Regions, who are maybe have written a paper on these things. Yeah, I know that I've seen some, but I can't come up with a name. But that I can send you afterwards.
Good. Thank you so much.
Yes.
So again, Merete, thank you so much for coming by. And let's say goodbye to the listeners. Bye.
Bye.